Hey friends, today we're diving into a real, raw, and powerful conversation with someone who totally gets it. Meet lupus warrior and advocate Rekha. She was diagnosed in her late teens and spent years navigating the ups and downs and total UTF moments of autoimmune disease. In this episode, we're talking about the moment she knew something was seriously wrong, the wildest misconception she's had to shut down, and what she wishes she could tell her younger self. So, Rekha, welcome. We're so happy to have you today.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Karen. Can't wait to dive into the discussion.
But before we totally dive in, can you tell us about yourself and who you are outside of lupus? Because you are a person outside of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Rekha and I am 43 years old. I live with my husband and have a complicated cat situation right now. I have 3 indoor cats as well as 2 stray cats. One stray cat we co-parent with our neighbor, and another stray cat we have a makeshift house outside, a Tupperware box with some hay and stuff like that. So he kind of hangs out there. He gets several meals a day, but they're stray cats totally outside. So yeah, so we've got plenty of animals to use up our time. I work full time as a public health consultant, which I absolutely love, work remote. Doing a lot of training, professional development type work to ensure that providers are using best practices. So love doing that. And then I'm pretty much a homebody, like to hang out at home, watch TV, spend time with family and friends, things like that. And an avid traveler, travel a lot. And hopefully we'll get to talk about that later on during our chat together.
Well, I'd say right off the bat, where has been the best place you traveled? And then where would you not recommend going?
Oh my gosh. So I would say, I've been to a lot of countries and every place is unique, like they've got their own type of food and culture. And it's just really cool to, experience that and embrace that when you're in those countries. So I can't say that I would recommend one over the other because they're just also different. But I was in a meeting yesterday and that was our icebreaker question for the group of your favorite place you've traveled to or your bucket list travel destination. And I selected Switzerland just because it's beautiful and the views and there's just so much to do. And I mean, I'm a cheese and chocolate kind of girl. So
Yes.
it's all great. And so one of my places, but I would say next would be Iceland. If you want to see the Northern Lights, if you want to experience, there's just so much to do there. I could go on and on, but yeah, there's just so many cool places.
One place that's on my bucket list is Finland, because I saw that you can stay in igloos and they have the Northern Lights almost like half the year, like a crazy number. So I'm definitely going to have to make that happen.
Yeah, I didn't actually see the Northern Lights in Iceland. We went to Norway and saw the Northern Lights, and Finland is very close to Norway. So I think you would probably have a great time. It's cold, but I think it would be a lot of fun to go there.
Before we keep going down more rabbit holes about traveling, let's start from the beginning. Everyone's lupus story looks different, but there's always that moment when you realize, oh my gosh, something is seriously wrong. Did you have a moment like that, or was it more over time? And how did you first start to realize something was happening?
Yeah, so my symptoms happened really fast. So I was diagnosed when I was 19, and prior to that, I basically saw the doctor once a year for my physical, and that was it. Like I never really ever went to the doctor. And in the summer of 2001, it was the summer before my sophomore year of college, and we had just come back from a trip from India with my family. We were there for about a month. In the airport on the way back, I felt extremely tired, so tired that I was like on the airport floor. And for anyone that knows me, like I would never sit on or sleep on an airport floor, right? And so I was that ill, like fevers, temperature, and extreme fatigue. But we assumed it was, just caught something and, I was sick. It went away shortly after we got home and I was okay. And then probably a week later, I saw that there was sort of like a bug bite looking thing on my upper lip. I went to my primary care doctor. She took a look, said that it looked like it was a bug bite, nothing to worry about, sent me home. Waited a few days, only seemed like it was getting bigger, and went back to my primary care doctor. And she was like, yeah, it is. It does seem kind of infected. I'll give you some antibiotics. So prescribed antibiotics, only got bigger. And it was at the point where my upper lip literally was like swollen, bright red, sores all over it. Like it escalated fast, and then it traveled to the bottom of my mouth. And so my mouth was like as if I had a tomato, no exaggeration, on my lip. And within no time, it just kind of blew up. My entire face was swollen, sores everywhere on my face, inside my mouth, my lips, my ears, my scalp. Like it literally took over my entire head. And so at that point, we knew something was wrong, and my primary care provider had me check myself into the ER. ER then transferred me to the ICU. So I was there in the ICU for almost a week. And initially, they had diagnosed me with herpes, thinking that the sores was related to that. But after doing quite a bit of lab work, it came back negative. So they knew that it wasn't herpes. And so with a positive result for, my ANA, which is a test that helps determine if it's an autoimmune disease, along with the fact that I had a malar rash, butterfly rash, which is very common with people with lupus, among other symptoms, they determined that it was lupus. So all of that happened within a span of about a month of initial symptoms to being diagnosed. So on August 3rd, I was diagnosed officially with systemic lupus erythematosus.
Was it painful or?
Yeah, it was painful, but more so like a nuisance, right?
Sure.
There was swelling, there was like pus, there was open sores. And it obviously made it hard to eat because when you have sores in your mouth, and I think a lot of people with lupus can relate to this, that, just even one sore is difficult to eat certain foods, acidic foods, spicy foods, and you're really having to eat bland foods so that it doesn't hurt. So, imagine having your entire mouth covered with sores and, just it was painful in that way. Like it was just a different kind of pain. But yeah, it just took over everything. When I think back at just how fast it all happened, and really there was no way to respond in a way that you would normally think you would respond to a medical situation. It just all happened fast. And, 1 minute I'm in the doctor's office, talking about this and it seeming like it's a bug bite. And then the next second I'm in the ICU and it's like all hands on deck. It escalated really fast.
Because it went from 0 to 60, what was your experience post-diagnosis and recovery and treatment after that?
Yeah, so in the hospital, I was introduced to a rheumatologist, and that rheumatologist ended up being my rheumatologist for nearly 20 years of my diagnosis until he retired just before COVID. And so he was with me the entire time of really being awesome and being there to answer questions and, really just figure things out together. So he was great and, was there initially to help with the diagnosis. We had frequent appointments after I was released from the hospital and immediately put on medications, put on steroids to help with, everything that was going on with the symptoms. So yeah, it took me a little bit to really, recover from those symptoms. And, I was entering my second year of college and trying to navigate all of that along with this new diagnosis and all the symptoms that went along with it. So it was a lot, I would say. And just in general, like navigating college was a lot too, and trying to figure it all out. So it took a few years for me to really accept the diagnosis, but also figure out like how to navigate it.
It takes a lot of us a while to accept the diagnosis. You hear it, you have it, but it is a lot to process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Much of our community is in their early 20s navigating college and all those life events that come along with your 20s, first jobs, newly getting married, families, all of it. I would like to dive into your experience because it was a lot to navigate. Looking back on it, what would you recommend or what you could have done differently to help more?
Yeah, so when I was diagnosed, it was the summer before going back to school, and I didn't really take time to process it. I just kind of went back to school, right? Everything was normal, and I didn't share with anyone that this was the situation. My roommate knew that I was sick over the summer, but didn't really understand, like, what did that mean exactly? But she's the one that realized that I had shingles. Like when I got out of the shower, she was like, "Hey, Rekha, like there's something going on with your back." She saw the hair loss that happened literally 3 months after I was diagnosed. No one really said anything, but I know that probably people noticed. You have the moon face from the prednisone. My hair went from like super thick and long to short and thin. Like you notice those things, but all my friends were really supportive. No one ever, asked about what was going on or, anything to make me feel, uncomfortable or in any way or anything. But I think, looking back at it, I think the lupus probably was probably there at least a year prior to when I was diagnosed. In college, like I was always sleeping, and at the time I didn't connect it because I thought, this is college. You go out, you hang out with your friends late, you do all the social stuff, and then you're studying late and you're just trying to juggle all of that, right? And so I thought that the fatigue was just part of the experience. I didn't think that it was part of a medical condition. And people used to always make fun of me. My roommate would be like, "You like literally sit on your bed and you like pass out, like you're out, like you're studying and you're out, like you're always sleeping." And I just, I'm like, yeah, but we're like out until like 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, what do you expect? So I do think that it probably started at least a year prior to when I was diagnosed, just with the fatigue symptoms that I was experiencing a year prior to that. If I were to do things differently, I think I probably should have not gone back to school. I probably should have taken some time to really understand my disease, understand how to take care of myself, really take the time to do that because I didn't do really well in college. It was really hard for me to focus in class, to do my homework. I finished college, but I think I probably could have gotten way more out of it if I had focused on my health first and then did my schooling and gotten my education. So I probably would have done that differently. I also think, there's a lot that you don't know upfront and that you're not told about. Like in the last 3 years, I have like changed a lot with how I do things and what I do to support my health. And, I think back all the time, like right now I'm in remission, I'm doing great. And, I'm on the lowest medication I've ever been on. I have less appointments. I haven't been hospitalized in a long time. Things are really good. And I'm like, if I had implemented these things and known the things that I know now, would the last 23 years have looked different? And who's to say, it could have looked the same. But I think, knowledge is power. And, being able to have the support system that I have built with a social media community has been really powerful, like getting to know people, understanding their experiences, learning different information that you can't necessarily get from reading a book or talking to a doctor or, any of those things. I do think, the power of like peer support is really it's something. And so, definitely for people that don't engage in that kind of thing at this point, to look into it. And, it's all stuff that, just kind of listen, absorb, and then use whatever you think is going to work for you. It's not to say that you have to do those things or anything, but I do think, just being able to expand my knowledge has made a huge difference. And, really think if I could go back, that's what it would be, is to expand my community, get to know people, and really absorb all the information possible. I think I was in a place where I was just trying to navigate this by myself, and I did navigate it for like 20 years by myself. But, I didn't know any better. I didn't know that there was a whole community of people. I thought my doctors were who I was supposed to, get that information from. That's what I did. But, now that I see the other side of things, it does make a real difference. I think that's what I would say for anyone that is recently diagnosed or, dealing with symptoms and thinking it's lupus or any chronic illness, really being open to getting to know other people, learning new information and figuring out how that fits in with your lifestyle and how you want to navigate your journey.
I'm curious because I had a similar experience, but the trigger was caused by a hospitalization where I wasn't forced, but it made me do some self-reflection and figure out what I could do to change my health trajectory, because at that point it was just scary. I'm wondering if you had a pivotal moment where you're like, okay, I need to change, or was it a more gradual process? And then what did you actually look into changing that made a difference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've had lupus for 23 years, and the first 20 years, it was always something, Karen. It was like literally in and out of the hospital, like insane symptoms, just like extreme symptoms. And it was just like, that was the life, like day in and day out, just like living with, this like weight of lupus, and I was working full time. I was doing the things I needed to do, but also, lupus was right there and reminding me every second of the day, that I'm here, like I'm not going away. Like, and it was just always something. And you think you're getting better and then you're not. And then you think you're getting better and then you're not. And, COVID happened. And in 2022, I think it was, I was like, I'm working fully remote now. I can't go and see family or friends because I'm taking extra precautions. And so like I'm going nowhere and I'm kind of bored. So I was like, I'm going to join social media. I'm going to see what this is all about. So I joined Instagram, and that's where my eyes opened. And it was like, wait a minute, there is like all kinds of resources online, like that I had no idea about. So I just kind of like from January to May was just kind of like looking at different accounts and looking, just checking out things. And then I'm like, there's so much here that I didn't even know about. And so I started my page on Instagram and just started sharing some of the things that I've learned over the years. And I have found that by me being able to share my experiences and gaining this community, it's helped me heal a lot, in that like I had never shared my story in that first 20 years. I had never like processed out loud or even internally about like how this made me feel, how it affected me or anything. And so like the ability to be able to share that experience with other people who like weren't going to judge me, who understood me, I truly believe like that has helped me heal, just by being able to talk about it. And then I'd say the other things that I've implemented is just, really trying to it's all trial and error, like with medications, with food, with everything. And so just taking small steps to make changes. And that is included, sleep. Sleep is really important for me, making sure that I get, a good number of hours of sleep every night. On the weekends, sleeping in for as long as my body needs. Exercise, I try to get out for a walk every day. I do yoga. I've found the things that I'm able to do. I can't really do a lot of cardio heavy things. And so I've found other alternatives that help me keep active. And that has been through walking and yoga. Food, I'm a vegetarian, but I eat what I want. So if there's a day that I want to have cake, I have cake. If I want to have a cookie, I have a cookie. But I also make sure that I am eating good foods. I am balancing what I eat, really making sure that what I eat is supportive of my body. There's going to be days where I'm like, I'm going to have this. For me, that's okay. Like it works for what I've determined works well for what I need for nutrition. But it took a lot of time to figure out like what that balance is. The other piece is work-life balance. I work a lot and I like to work, so it makes it even harder to step away. And so I used to work evenings, weekends, because I liked working. And I realized that that was not healthy. I needed a separation between work and personal life, and that, the personal part of my life is important. It's not just about work, and really finding that balance, that harmony between working and the other things that are part of your life. And so now I just do my 8-9 hours of work, and evenings are my time, weekends are my time. It is not dedicated to work. That has really helped with stress level. So I think all of these things combined have really shifted how I view my disease, but also the impact the disease has on me. And, I have been doing really great in the last 3 years. So now I'm like, I got to make sure I keep doing these things, and like I don't want to disrupt like what's going well right now. So I think, the changes that I made, they're not easy. Like you have to kind of figure out how to incorporate it and make it a sustainable habit. I would recommend for people that are trying to figure out what works for them, start small, like pick one thing, do that one thing, see if it's working for you, track your symptoms, track things to, understand if it's actually helping or not. And if it seems like it is, then continue doing it and then add another thing. It takes years of time to figure out what habits are going to work for you. And, you build those slowly. And over time, like all the things that I do to support my health now doesn't seem like a chore. It's just kind of like part of my day to day. So yeah, it's I think there are important steps to take. It's just a matter of like doing it in a way that's not going to overwhelm you.
In our world of biohacking and health and wellness, it can get overwhelming really quickly. I appreciate one thing at a time and progress, not perfection. But by just taking one small thing at a time, you get to a place, okay, I can do this. I feel good about myself. It's a fantastic place to get to. So just focus on those small steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, takes time. I agree. Patience. But to see the effort pay off, right? Like that's just everything. And so, just stick with it, keep going, eventually something's going to give, right? And so I think just don't give up is the key message, just to keep trying new things to figure out what your body responds to.
For sure. Rekha, what's one of the more unexpected or fun ways that you've adapted to your life with lupus that you just didn't think of before?
Yeah. So I've always seen myself as being a mom of, having children, being able to do crafts with them and dance with them and do all those, parenthood type things. Lupus didn't have that in the cards for me. So, like just with it being so extreme for the first 20 years of my life, it just was never, an option. And then in 2016, I was diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension, and that affects your heart, your lungs. And, you need to be on medications that have effects on a fetus. And so, you can't get pregnant while being on those meds. And for me to be off those meds is not possible, in that it will severely affect my ability to do my day-to-day things, to breathe. So, as a result of that diagnosis, that put another layer of complication on things. And so, if I didn't have that, and with these last 3 years being really great, maybe that would have been an option for me to have a child, but it's not. And, my husband and I have come to terms with that. And that's why we probably have 8,000 cats. But I think, it is what it is. And that's what my life, that's how it ended up, being. And that's okay. There are other ways for people that are in a similar situation as me. Adoption, surrogacy, those, surrogacy was not an option for me. It just due to the financial aspects of that and how expensive it is. And, I think at this point, given my age and everything else, with my health, kids aren't in the future. But the way that we've embraced that is we do have our cats. We enjoy our cats, and the money that would have gone towards children now go towards traveling. So I get to go to all these cool places, and my money goes towards doing all those cool things and having all of those experiences. And so that's what, my husband and I do that together, and we enjoy it. And, I think that's what came out of the fact of not being able to, have a family, and experience that piece of it. But we've taken that and shifted it towards like, what are the other things that we could enjoy, if we can't have this as part of our life.
You light up when you start talking about traveling, as we witnessed earlier.
Yeah, you gotta, it's, it's hard, right? It's a hard thing to grapple with. And you can kind of sit there and grieve that and, mourn that side of things, or you can do that and then let it go and say like, that's just what it is, where I was meant to be in this journey, and put that towards something else, right? And I've chosen to put my time into my profession and traveling and, just really enjoying that. I'm happy with where I am in my life. I think there's different ways to live life, and whatever way that is, you can find purpose and passion in that. So, I just had to redefine things and reimagine things for me based on where, things have landed in my journey with lupus.
I've definitely been in that moment where you have to grieve the loss of something that could have been or used to be because of lupus. And it's a hard pill to swallow. Any advice or thoughts on how to kind of embrace that moment and move forward?
I think, everyone wants to live a good, happy, healthy life. And for me, that motivation was like, I need to figure out what my body responds to. I need to figure out what I need to do to be in that place. And I think, for anyone that is going through this, taking the time, investing in yourself and really figuring out what that looks like for you. There isn't a manual for this. There isn't a step-by-step guide to say like, this is what you should eat. This is what you should do for exercise. This is how much sleep you should get. That's like different for everyone, including medications. There isn't one medication that's going to work for everyone. And so I think it's really, investing in yourself and figuring out what that is. No person can tell you what that is. Only you can tell yourself what that is. And that's by being open and trying new things and really taking the time to do that. But I think, when you do invest in yourself and you take that time, you do see results. It just it's a matter of like just sticking to it and believing that good things are going to come. I think I do believe in manifesting, thinking about like, what do I want for myself? Like, what do I envision for myself? How do I want my life to look? And then thinking about how you're going to get there, and you will eventually get there. It's not going to be easy, right? And you're going to have a lot of ups and downs, but you can get there. It just is a matter of like taking the time to figure it out and just keep going regardless of like what those downs look like. Just keep going.
And be kind to yourself throughout the process, because it's a long journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, like the journey doesn't end. The journey just keeps going. Like I'm here in this place right now, and tomorrow I have no idea. Tomorrow is going to be something else. But being okay with that, right? Of like, if something happens tomorrow, I feel like I have everything that I've worked through this point, build on and really use that strength to push me forward. So even if something shifts in my health, I have that mindset of like, I can do this. Like I've done hard things before. I can do this and we'll figure this out. So, I know that, my story is like ever changing and ever evolving, but you kind of like, you figure it out over time. That's all you can do, really.
Yeah. And I like how you say you build that strength over time. We're running a big campaign around invisible strength because it takes that within us to be able to navigate these diseases. What actually builds that strength? You said it. It's those hard times that really challenge us physically and mentally. You get through it and you can do hard things. And that's a flipping cool feeling.
It is.
Rekha, anything else you would like to share with our community, either words of wisdom or any misconceptions, or if you'd like to set the record straight?
I would say is advocating for yourself is super important. When I was first diagnosed, it was all about my providers, my healthcare providers, and they know best. But actually, we know best, right? We know our body. And so if you think there's something wrong, advocate for yourself, really push to get answers, push to, understand what is going on with your body. And if people aren't listening to you, get a second opinion, bring family members into that to further advocate for you. I think a lot of times, it's hard to do that. It's not easy to do that, especially when you feel like, there are experts in the room who all of these degrees after their name and, may like seem to know more, but your body best and, listen to your body. And if you feel like something is wrong, get answers, don't let it go. And, it's hard to try to, be that voice in the room and really, stick to, there is something wrong. In many cases, people saying like, no, there's nothing wrong, or it's this or it's that, but keep trying to advocate for yourself, because it's so important to try to determine what is wrong sooner rather than later. With lupus, getting a diagnosis, they say on average, it takes 6 years. And imagine if that diagnosis could happen earlier. That 6 years, like, who knows, like how it's affecting your organs and things like that. It's really important to try to resolve symptoms sooner rather than later. Advocating for yourself is just really, really important, and relying on your family and friends to help you do that, especially initially as you're like figuring out how to do that.
When you're sitting in that doctor's office, sometimes I felt frozen with the information and what was happening. Having another person as a buffer to ask different questions was so helpful for me.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you're talking to your doctors, right, there might be scary information, new information, hard information, and it's really helpful to have someone there with you who can be that second set of ears and, ask some of the questions that maybe you're not able to, or that you haven't thought of, or, you're just processing everything that's going on. And maybe that other person can really be, that person next to you that can say like, okay, I get what they're saying. I'm going to ask these questions. I'm going to take notes, just it's very helpful, especially for those important appointments, where you might just be in this space of like needing to process and not really being able to ask those questions that you would want to ask.
For sure. Rekha, thank you so much for being so open and honest with us. I so appreciate you sharing your story and all the insights and ups and downs that has come along with your journey. But you're such a bright light. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope that this will resonate with people and also be helpful.
Rekha, where can people follow you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram at Living Lupus Together, and my goal with that page is to provide information, education, but also to inspire and encourage people through their journeys with lupus.
Thank you for your advocacy work.
Thank you.